Good afternoon. This is Ann McConnell from the Toy Association. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Navigating Toy Trends and Tomorrow's Audiences with the Insights family. Before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. Today's session is being recorded. A copy of the recording and PDF of the presentation will be made available to all who registered in the coming days. Simply look for an email from the Toy Association. It will also be available on demand via our website. We will have time for questions at the end of the webinar. So as the session moves along, simply use the Q&A icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen to pose a question. We will address them at the end. Our speaker today is Adam Woodgate, VP Research and Solutions at the Insights family. Adam leads a team of kids and family research specialists providing tailored insights and in-depth reports to help clients stay ahead of the curve. He has over 30 years experience in the industry and previously led research roles at the BBC, Worldwide, and Dubit. The Insights family is the global leader in the next generation of consumers and families, providing real-time data on their attitudes, behaviors, and consumption patterns. They speak to 800,000 family members from 22 countries worldwide annually. I'm happy now to hand the session over to Adam Woodgate. Adam?
And thank you. Before we dive into the data, I want to acknowledge the Toy Association for hosting today's session. Our partnership ensures that insights we share are framed in a way that supports manufacturers and retailers navigating today's rapidly changing environment. So let me begin by setting context for who we are and why our data matters.
And
As
Adam, if I could ask you to speak up just a little, that would be great.
As Anne said, the Insights family speaks to the best part of 750, 800,000 people across a 12-month period in 22 countries. You can see that on the map. And that gives us a voice into 59% of the world's population and nearly 80% of the world's economy. We specialize exclusively in kids, teens, parents, young adults, and family intelligence. So, let's look at the roadmap for today's webinar. We're going to begin with the macro forces shaping the toy industry, the economics, the geopolitics, and consumer sentiment. From there, we'll explore how parents are thinking about toys, what they value, what worries them, and what drives their decisions. Next, we'll look at the expanding audience the audience landscape. That's kids and teens, and then more importantly, for some perhaps, the growing kidult segments. We'll then explore how play patterns are evolving, what's rising, what's plateauing, and where the category momentum is. And finally, we'll conclude with some strategic actions that the industry can take heading forward into 2026 and beyond. So it doesn't need me to tell you that the world is in a dynamic state of flux at the moment. And we'll zoom out first of all and look at the global picture and then zero in a little bit of the US comparison. So our global data isn't all 190 plus countries in the world. It's an average of the 22 we survey. And then the US data obviously is our US data. The period we're looking at is the 3 months ending the 31st of October. So almost up to date. And we'll look at the issues that parents are worried about at the moment. And you'll notice I've highlighted in red everything money related or that parents believe is money related. And that comes up to 22% globally. So parents globally, 22% of them combined are worried about financial money, economic pressures that they face as a family. It's a little bit lower in the US. It's around 19%. So it's not far away, but it is a better picture from parents' perspective in the US. And the pressures they face reshape how they spend, what they value, and what they expect from brands. And these pressures are influencing toy purchasing in subtle but powerful ways. And if we understand the microdynamics, then we can design products and strategies that resonate deeply despite this uncertainty. And this means that parents still buy toys, but they're just perhaps a little bit more selective. Perhaps they scrutinize more and they're more likely to choose brands they trust. So there are three major macro forces shaping the landscape right now. First of all, we've got the rising living costs. I've just shown what they're worried about, but also the reality is parents face higher utility bills, they face higher grocery costs. So some of the necessities takes away from discretionary spending. So families reprioritize to the essentials, and toys need to increasingly justify their value. We have issues of shifting geopolitical relationships, and that influences manufacturing choices, supply chains, and ultimately price and availability of products. And then we have the merging of the physical and digital world. To a kid who's born post 2010, when the tablet arrived, what we also know as Gen Alpha, or I call them touchscreen natives, they've never known a world without touchscreen on demand mobile interactive entertainment. So, how does the physical fit into that world? So, the line between the physical and the digital is disappearing, and play has become hybrid by default. So, this interaction forces and creates both risk, or the interaction of these forces rather creates both risk and opportunity. So parents are scrutinizing value ever more. They want durability, they want replayability. They want to know their kids are going to play with something that they spent that hard-earned salary on. They want to know that those toys are going to bring joy and value to kids. They now expect experiences that either match or complement digital toys. Toys are no longer really only physical. There has to be some element that they can take onto the screen. And if they don't, what we've seen is that kids will create that experience. They will mix the digital with the physical, and they'll meld and mold and mesh toys together that no brand manager would ever imagine would go together. I've seen it. Kids in a room playing with an app, Toca Playtime or Toca Tea Party, and they've got their doll, their teddy, their G.I. Joe, all sitting around having a tea party. They've created their own environment that mixes the digital with the physical. And on the business side, we have the issue of raw materials, costs changing, instability of those, manufacturing shifts, trade dynamics. They're shaping margins and pricing models. And these systematic shifts, not temporary ones, which mean toy innovation must adapt accordingly. This slide shows our monthly spending. I'm going to explain this. So our data, as I've said, is from the 1st of August to the 31st of October. But one of the things I want to explain is we do that to give a good base size for our data so we can be sure of what we're showing you. What we do within that, one of the questions is we ask to parents is what they think they've spent on a bunch of categories in the last month. So it's true when it says on screen it's monthly spending, it's just averaged over the 3 month period, the three full months ending 31st of October. What you'll notice is that groceries, household bills take a big chunk out of the family budget. Those are the kind of the necessities. You might argue that some fashion and clothing is necessities if children are growing fast, and we know they do. If you're a parent, they soon grow out of a pair of trousers or a t-shirt or a coat, and things need replacing. Then we start getting into the discretionary spend. So eating out, technology, lessons, health and wellness trips, presents. You'll notice toy isn't in the top 10. It's just outside. But you'll also notice we're seeing less spending compared to 3 years ago. Now, that could be for two reasons. One, families have tightened their belts. English expression. So they're watching what they're spending, and therefore they're spending more. They're getting better value from their grocery shop. They've changed their utility providers to get a better deal. They've maybe cut out some subscriptions. They're going to shops that or only buying in sale times. I don't know why the prices have come down. It could be just that inflation is dropping, or it could be that families are making those conscious decisions. I'll draw your attention to the top, which is that you'll notice that apart from one blip, which was post-COVID, the August to October 2022 figure, generally spending on toys has had little changed, and this is claimed by parents, remember, has changed little over the period, certainly since August of last year. And the good news is that it's relatively stable in a declining household spend. So, in other words, what you're seeing is the importance of toys in the mind of of parents. So they are the budget's committed, kind of, but they are looking for other factors in the way that they spend their money. So spending on toys relatively stable in what is a household picture that looks like things are in decline, uh, out of choice, I'm sure. So, um, kids continue to play a huge role in influencing what families buy. For many parents, their child has a medium to high influence across a range of purchases, typically related to the child themselves. So, here on the chart on the bottom left, clothing for kids, toys, gifts for their friends, board games, those sorts of things. Impulse buying is also a powerful behavior. Parents of 3 to 9 year olds make relatively frequent unplanned purchases. And you can see that there's a chunk of parents there who buy once a week or more often, or a few times a month. So around about 30 to 35% do that. The biggest chunk, nearly half, well, between two-fifths and half, are occasional buyers. And that reinforces the importance of visibility, of licensing, of character-driven merchandising, because kids are the spark, parents are the wallet. And that leads us nicely into licensing, because licensing is, a growing trend. We've seen that across the industry. Rather than creating your own IP, if there's a popular IP, licenses and make the toys. That seems to be the game. So what we're looking at is the core driver of toy relevance here. So parents overwhelmingly choose products connected to the media worlds that their kids love. So you'll notice that just pipping films for the first time is video games, and we can see the importance of video games. And you don't need me to tell you, when you've got a video game that generated an almost $1 billion box office take for Minecraft, how important video games is to this touchscreen generation. Movies consistently come in second. Then we see more and more growth in the influencers. Now, with this question, it's interesting, isn't it? So we do see that, children blur the lines between an influencer talking to camera and telling them about makeup tips or fashion tips versus someone like a Blippy or a Ms. Rachel. So we have to be aware of that for that. But still, YouTube and social media are drivers of licensed products. TV shows, they always have Bluey, Paw Patrol, Peppa Pig, SpongeBob, they've always been there. And superheroes, fascinating that superheroes retain their relevance, especially in a world where kids are sort of anxious, and superheroes provide that good guidance. You know that if you take Spider-Man, a character that's troubled, and kids can relate to that, and they know that at the end of the day, the characters do the right thing, and it teaches them about doing the right thing. So all these top five really important. On the right, you can see how it varies by age, how superheroes is number one, but then video games takes over with that core gamer audience, which is the 6 to 9s. They're the ones getting into gaming, and then films comes into their own with the preteens. So whether it's TV shows, whether it's movies, music, sports, it provides reassurance for parents and excitement to kids, and it also shortens that decision making around purchases. Familiarity reduces risk from a parent's perspective. So now we'll move into the second major section of the webinar. We're focusing specifically on parents, and parents are still the gatekeepers when it comes to their children's entertainment. So understanding their motivations and anxieties helps us design products that meet both the functional and emotional need of a child. So, what do parents look for from their children's play activities? So, it's any play. What do they hope their children are going to do and develop? Now, you'll notice here we're looking back to 2021. So, 4 years, it's the year we started our parents' surveys around the world. So, that's as far as we can go. And most of them have changed very little. Creative skills still around 19-20%, independence, physical activity, better mental health. But creativity is the top developmental goal parents want in their children. 1 in 5 list it as the number one skill. The close second though is social skills. Really important, and you'll notice that's dropped by 4 percentage points over that 4 year period. Certainly, kids, their parents want this sort of more ability to solve problems and be creative and use their imagination. And so the opportunity to design toys that feel fun for kids and deliver visible benefits for parents seems to be really important. They want toys that empower kids. And that's important because kids of this generation, those born post 2010, want to be empowered. They want to know how to do stuff, how to survive in the world because they know it's going to be tougher. They've lived through a lot of tough things in their time: climate change, the COVID crisis, cost of living crisis, and conflict in the world. So they know it's not a great place. So the ability to be empowered through their play, through their entertainment, is really important to kids. So, what do parents look for in terms of functionality in products that they buy for their kids? Primarily toys. So, when they're choosing them for 3 to 9 year olds, we see three factors dominate wherever you look on the list. So, quality, they want durability, longevity, and build. They all matter. Value for money. They want not cheapness, but fairness. They want to know that it's a value for money product. Most important, and when we ask kids why they want a toy that they don't have, the number one reason is because it's fun. So fun is almost the entry point. So fun and entertaining. Fun means kids will want to play with it. And this creates what we call a sweet spot. Well-made toys that deliver fun and support development are going to resonate strongly with parents. It's reflected in the rising demand for toys that may have a STEM relationship, they're creative, or they improve social or cognitive skills. And when we look at what parents do with their kids, you'll notice certain things stand out. Now, we've got the top five, and I've plonked playing with toys in at the end. And there's a dotted line because it's outside the top five, but not far. And as you can imagine, if you're a parent yourself, getting down on the carpet or on the rug and playing with toys isn't always a first priority after a day at work. But kids love those parent-child moments. So, when they ask, we always cave in the end. But generally, the joint behaviors are watching TV, playing video games, and then we've got some other things like eating out together, cooking and baking, or just going for a bike ride. Family hobbies, they offer that powerful lens into everyday life. Watching TV and gaming remain the dominant share activities, as I've said. But, particularly along the younger groups, and I'll draw your attention to the numbers on the right of the screen, younger groups playing with toys is still a popular pastime, especially with those younger children, building, the railway set together and, getting the building blocks out and building towers and strange shapes, always fun to do, especially if you're a kid at heart. It's important because co-play strengthens attachment to toy and extends repeat usage. The ability to do something with mum or dad from a kid's perspective and do it over again and again and again. It satisfies that need that kids tell us where they want more parent-child moments in their lives. So riding a bike might be one thing, but in the middle of winter, that's not necessarily practical. So playing with board games, doing a puzzle, getting the train set out are all fun things to do together. You'll notice though that co-play also involves video games. So the digital form of play, is definitely up there. And I think partly this is due, especially at the younger ages, because parents need to help their kids. Yeah, parents need to help you get through a level. When you get stuck and they need to help maybe set things up. Parents may have rules about using, electricity and plugging things in and stuff. So, there is that element there that parents are likely to be involved a little bit more out of necessity, whereas a lot of toys are designed specifically with kids in mind. And we all know not every video game is. It's also a suggestion that opportunities for products designed explicitly for joint parent-child play there might be an opportunity around that. So let's look at the frequency of things families do together. So 72% of parents play with their kids with toys around once a week. Not significant, it's just under 5%, but it's still up year on year. 70% do activities with their kids. So whether that's sports or exercise or just being active. Two-thirds are doing arts and crafts. Um, and, a similar amount do board games, and just a little bit less, just over three-fifths play with puzzles. And you can see there's some significant year-on-year increases. And that's because we think families are looking for offline bonding moments. I think parents have a lot of screen time at work. They're obviously conscious of the amount of screen time their kids have, especially this generation. And they probably look for those joint activities that take them away from screens. And it tells us that despite a digital dominance in the family, tactile shared play really does remain core in family life. So, big shifts affecting toy markets, changing family circumstances. And this slide summarizes the major behavioral shifts we're seeing among parents and adults. So, first of all, we have cost pressures. Value and quality now dominate the purchase decisions. Then we've got the changing family behavior. Adults are embracing play like we've never seen before for lots of different reasons. Maybe it's a dip into nostalgia, maybe it's to collect things, maybe it's just for fashion. And we do see that. And then we have, so they're embracing play and the kidult purchasing trend, obviously, and, as recorded in, industry figures, is an upward trend. And then we've got supply chain shifts. Sustainability, tech integration are becoming expectations of children and their parents now, especially as most parents are millennials, so they are digital natives. So there is an expectation. It's not kind of optional. So the key takeaway is brands need that flexibility, and companies who adapt quickest to these changes are gaining advantage. So let's move on to the next stage of our webinar today, which is audience expansion. Kids and teens remain core to the toy audience. That's a fact. But what's shifting is how they play, how they prioritize, and how gender influences preferences. And these insights help us understand what's resonating and where the new opportunities lie. So let's start and go by age. So what we're looking at is the top toy categories, and what we did in the survey here is rank which of these toy types you play with most. And we've just looked at rank number one. We've not looked at any of the other rankings. So the data here is those that put the first choice, first preference, if you like. And you'll notice for preschoolers, we see developmentally logical differences. So girls aged 3 to 5 overwhelmingly graduate towards plush toys that comfort, they facilitate nurture and imaginative play. Whereas we can see that boys, whilst plush toys is number one, they're leaning more into construction play, which supports the hands-on building, motor skill development, and experimentation. So it tells us that early play patterns are driven by emotional comfort on one side and mechanical curiosity on the other. You will see there's some specific, gender differences within this age group. Let's move into the middle grades, or 6 to 9 year olds if you prefer. And what we see is shared, skewed, and gendered play. So, the picture becomes nuanced, more nuanced, sorry. There is multiple overlap between genders, both boys and girls showing great engagement across a number of categories. However, gender skews remain. Girls lean towards plush toys, less so than the younger kids did. But dolls and play sets, certainly there is a huge girl skew there. Boys are more towards action now, as well as construction toys. So action figures there, matching the plush toys figure. But you've got certainly that gender difference. And again, in toy vehicles. So this age is the pivotal stage. I always talk about middle graders. They're a fascinating age group to me when I meet them, because they've sort of got one foot in preschool, and we can see that with what they've kept from their younger ages, to one foot in, heading towards adolescence, particularly the 9 and 10 year olds. So it is this transition pivotal stage where both identity and socialization begin shaping their toy preferences. Then we'll look at the preteens. So, amongst this age group, something interesting happens. So, plush does remain the top category. And I think if you went out there, they're not going to tell you that their teddy or their fluffy dog is their favorite toy. I think on the street they'd never admit it, but in the privacy of their bedroom, it's probably an element of nostalgia thinking back to when they were young, the comfort blanket, the mashed potato apple pie moment in their lives. So I think that probably is why we see this. But it does underscore the rising importance of this of the tactile nature of this generation. It's a worrying time. You're moving through this process of physical change as you go into adolescence and puberty, as well as you're tying into transferring from, depending on where you are in the world, but from elementary school through middle school to high school, and so it becomes a scary time in life. As humans, we grow and change more in this period. So it's understandable that those comfort blankets, those sensory toy categories, including which I would say plush toys has a value in, really do stand out. So I would also point to construction and action figures moving toward gender parity, and I think that's really important. I think we do see this across lots of things that we study, that boys are into things before girls, but girls do catch up because either they've got other things that cause a lag, or they just don't. Boys are just have that natural leaning towards wanting to play with something quicker, that probably is slightly too old for them sometimes. So it does show that hands-on, mastery-driven play certainly is to be valued. So in this age group, I would say what we're seeing is a blending of nostalgia, of creativity and early dependence. And I think plush taps into all three of those. So I think that's why we do see plush toys, hanging around with this audience. Let's move into a little bit of a summary. What I'm going to do in the next 2 or 3 slides is sort of align what we're seeing with whether that marries up with Piaget's theory of human development, which I think is still a model that we can reference today. So when we look at 3 to 9s in girls, we do see that plush leads, offering the nurturing, the comfort, the collectability. And dolls and play sets, they allow expression, role play, and imagination in the audience. Boys leaning into action toys, which allows them to develop mastery, hands-on play, dynamic play, if you like. And then we've got the construction and the vehicles, which are sort of all around spatial, mechanical, hands-on exploration. And the preferences do reflect both developmental stages, but media that they're exposed to. As we look at the preteens, we can see motivation shifting much more towards social being an important part. Girls 10 to 12 preferring outdoor toys, offer physical skills, give them independence. Card games allow them to strategize, compete, and share, both with family or just play with friends. And then in the boys' space, obviously, this is a point where uh, digital toys becomes part of the play. So that is interaction. It's also social. It's also challenging. So it plays to the mastery element. And then we've got board games. Again, it's about strategy. It's about thinking. It's about working out things 2 or 3 moves ahead. And so this age group moving into this cognitive readiness for more structured, rule-based and strategic play. Now, how does that play out? Now, I don't really want to compete with sales data. So what we're looking at here is passion. So what we ask is kids to tell us the toys they like, in the repertoire. So we give them blank boxes, so there's no pre-coded bias. So they just ask the question, tell us the toys you like. And we give them 4 boxes. We ask them to tell us their favorite first, and then 3 more that they like. And then we aggregate them. What it means is we get a very long list, but it takes away that sort of bias that a predetermined list would present. So we're seeing some that evergreen IPs outperform across all ages. Um, and there's something here that I'd draw your attention to. Both Lego and Barbie, I often get challenged when I say they're not end products. They are like a platform. And people say, how is Barbie a platform? You know, YouTube is a platform. And I go, well, no, Barbie is a medium that children have that allows them to express themselves through fashion and design and allow their imaginations to go wild. It's almost like having an avatar in a video game. You can, color the hair, you can, wear trousers or skirt or, shirt or blouse or whatever. It allows you to do what you want to do. And you may not be able to do it in real life. So it's kind of like it allows that expression. Lego, it's a platform for construction, imagination, creativity. You can build the tallest tower in the world, use all your Lego blocks, or you can follow the guidebooks to build the police station or whatever. The fact is these toys align themselves very much to kids' archetypes, kids' needs. Hot Wheels too. What we're seeing there is, the challenge, the mastery, but also within Hot Wheels, there's the collectability. Nerf obviously is outdoor, it's social play. So you can see the brands really, moving and evolving. So, you've got the consistency, but it does demonstrate the power of evergreen brands, especially those that parents are familiar with that will recycle as the generation comes down. Um, but it doesn't mean that innovation isn't taking place, and there's a lot of innovation across this. And of course, brand extensions, both Lego and Barbie have had movies, Hot Wheels has had a TV series. So you can see, these aren't just end products, they are experiences that kids are engaging with, not just on the toy platform, but across platforms. So, if you know Piaget's theory of cognitive development, you'll know some of the elements about it that children can only develop humans only develop at a certain pace, and a 2-year-old can only generally do what a 2-year-old can do, and that's a fact. So, this slide really I've put in to show why we're seeing the patterns we're seeing. And this is the pre-operational and early concrete stages where play is imaginative, sensory role-based, and experiential. And girls are prioritizing nurturing and expressive play, whereas boys focus on exploration and physical manipulation of objects. So understanding the cognitive stages explains why certain toy types naturally perform better at certain stages. And so what we're seeing here is this leaning into soft toys that we've seen with girls, dolls and play sets, and with boys, the construction, the action figures, toy vehicles, all coming through. When we move up to the 10 to 12-year-olds, we can see that we move further along into the concrete operational stage and begin the stage where reasoning starts because kids under a certain age can't formally reason. So this is where they understand rules, they start thinking strategically, they engage in hypothetical reasoning. It's one of the reasons when we do research with younger kids, we have to give them things to look at and tell us what give us a reaction because it's very hard for a 5-year-old to hypothesize. So, we get that. So this it corresponds to this increased interest in digital toys, in board games, in outdoor play, card games, and it's the age where kids start forming their hobbies, something that carries on into adult life for many, and brand loyalties start to solidify. And then I couldn't ignore the rise of tech-driven play. And so there's three bits of data here really. There's the proportion of kids who use their tablet and smartphones, so 3 to 12. It's in the 20s. It's slightly above a quarter for tablet, slightly below a quarter for smartphone, but you can see that they are using their devices to play games. So that's natural. The amount of time spent playing games on weekdays averages an hour, just over an hour 10, and weekends another half hour on top of that to just over an hour 40. And we see that kids still want tech. And when we look at amongst preteens, the most wanted toys, we can see things like a Nintendo Switch, VR headsets, PlayStations, and I should point out this is an open-ended question. So again, the numbers are depressed because it's not box ticking, it's kids writing in and getting a sense of what they really want. So let's now have a look away from teens and kids into kidults. These, particularly the young adults, reclaiming play, nostalgia, fandom, and self-expression are driving significant growth across multiple categories. So we found this statistic. So around nearly 30% of toy sales according to Sakana from Consumers 12 Plus, are that age group. So that's a sizable chunk. And the categories seeing the biggest growth amongst kidults are, premium construction sets, retro nostalgia or reissues, and fandom or collectibles, so the Funko Pop stuff. So those are the things that we're kind of seeing, really moving. But young adult favorites like Lego, Pokemon, Barbie, and more really, resonate. Lego resonates the most, and of course, Lego does a number of products specifically made for an older audience, and they're up 41% year on year. And at the further down the list, and again, this is an open-ended question, so there's lots of opportunities to write answers in. We do see Mattel franchises coming through, so Mattel brands overall coming through, Funko Pop coming through. And these brands, wherever you are in this list, offer a blend of collectability, display, you can display them. There's fandom, identity, emotional connection. And I'd also say there's an element of community. And programs like the Lego Masters, that's been franchised around the world, where people build, certainly hasn't done any harm to the appeal of a brand like that. But also, there is certainly appeal for, products that sort of young adults particularly played with as kids. So, um, this slide sort of just explores the emotional layers behind kidult purchasing. So there's four key drivers: nostalgia, toys evoking childhood memories, comfort, that sort of thing. Then there's collectability, limited editions, craftsmanship, and the ability to put them on display in cabinets or on shelves in a room. People like that. And, two-thirds say owning a collectible makes them special. There's social identity. Toy collections serve as conversation starters, but they also identify you as part of a group. And then there's mental well-being. Many people talk about the fact that toys provide stress relief. And certainly, we know that a lot of people express a desire to, have things that support their mental well-being. Um, Toy purchases that relate to young adults' favorite brands. So, in other words, again, this is something related to fandom licensing. So, they're more likely to pay for something related to a favorite character or a TV show or a movie or a video game. So, it's not dissimilar to what the kids were showing, although the order's slightly different with video game higher up amongst kids. But they're identity led and they signal that belonging and passion, and it's why cross media franchises continue to survive. I just thought we'd jump back to kids for a second because toy purchase related to various things here are all pretty much either flat or up year on year. But you'll notice toy purchases related to sports teams or music artists are really growing. And I think you can see, particularly in the US, there, the interest in soccer as I was going to say football, but soccer, for that reference, is really playing through with all of this. Taylor Swift, again, a pop icon and very much part of kids wanting products related to that. Right, let's move on to, the play pattern evolution, understand what's rising, what's plateauing, and why these shifts matter. So, first of all, I thought we'd look at just some key things that have moved between 2019 and 2024. So, the big moving categories, the big moving genres are action figures, toy vehicles, electronic games, creative toys, card games, role play, dress up, slime hugely. We think that's down to the sensory. We see squishmallows coming through. We think it's down to the sensory and that need to have touchy-feely experiences. So they're the biggest climbers. And it's also a category that's benefited from the ASMR effect. When we look at top hobbies that influence play patterns, we can see this real split between boys with video games, girls with arts and crafts. So the split has implications for product innovation, especially at hybrid play that builds a bridge between digital and tactile activities. The girls are still into the creativity, self-expression, whereas boys, the mastery element, the challenge, the social of video games really showing through there. And now a few little case studies that I want to say. So this is our data. This is what we've looked into using our data to try and look at some of the factors, that you might want to be aware of. So one of the most explosive trend of the last 2 years is Labubu. Its appeal combines a number of things. But I mean, I think the key things that I would say are tapping into the cute, creepy aesthetic that Gen Alpha kind of love. If you look at how Gen Alpha's enjoys Stranger Things, Wednesday, stuff like that, it's built for social media virality. Scarcity and collectability create emotional currency. It sits at the intersection of toys, art, and fashion. It certainly fits the current trend toward digital culture. There's definitely community power, and it gives kids emotional expression. And I think more than anything, timing was perfect. Kids leaned into comfort objects, expressive characters, sensory and small scale collectibles. So I do think there's an element that Labubu was of the moment. Here's a phygital case study around Pokemon. So Pokemon, one of the strongest illustrations of how physical and digital ecosystems blend just seamlessly. The franchise has been evolving in its phygital model for over a decade. So there's a number of landmarks there. The physical trading card boom, online introduced in 2011, the launch of Pokemon Live, fully portable, digital first, but still connected to physical cards in 2022. So you've seen this progression. And it highlights that digital doesn't replace physical, it just accelerates engagement. And kids value this tactile collecting, but digital gives them that expansion of play, community, and competition. Looking at Lego and their augmented reality case study. So, Lego's success in AR was another example of extending play through technology. Hidden Side was one of the first major AR play themes, and kids built the physical sets and then used an app to reveal ghosts and other hidden worlds. More recently, the AR technology allows them to scan physical vehicles, race in AR, explore life-size models, play mini games and challenges. So you can see, another case study where you're bringing together the screen and the physical into play. And then a mixed reality case study. We've got here Hot Wheels. Hot Wheels Rift Rally represents one of the most advanced examples of mixed reality in toys. The play value multiplies because the home becomes a customizable racetrack. The car can digitally transform into 140 or more Hot Wheels vehicles, and mixed reality unlocks progression, challenges, rewards, and replayability. All things that kids are going to want to come back to. So the hybrid model meets kids where they already are, blending video game excitement and physical motion. So, a quick recap. This side summarizing the three forces that will define the next decade of toy innovation. You've got phygital play, kids expecting digital layers to enhance, not replace the physical, licensing power, partnerships with music artists, influencers, and sports teams, create emotional relevance, and remember, parents are the gatekeepers who prioritize safety, durability, value, and developmental benefits. So, winning strategies blend child excitement and parent confidence. So, to our final few minutes, looking at the strategic section, which is all of it means for manufacturers, brand owners, retailers. So let's make a start. So to recap, we have the world in flux. Spending remains stable, but parents demand value and quality. Kidult purchases growing strongly, and sustainability in tech no longer optional. Expanding the audience, plush leads into early childhood, digital leads into pre-teens, and licensing and fandom cross-generational affinity. And evolving play patterns, sensory and creative play rising the fastest, digital play gaining traction across all ages. And these dynamics open powerful innovation pathways for the next few years. And the new era of play, the future of play we think is defined by more four macro directions, a hybrid phygital play, kids wanting that fluid play that moves frictionlessly between physical toys, apps, and online spaces, immersive play, where AR, XR, and VR unlock deeper storytelling and personalization, and trend acceleration, TikTok driving overnight trends, creators becoming category shapers, and discovery now happens on social platforms, not just shelves. And I don't think we can ignore sustainability. This is the generation that thinks very much about the impacts of climate change will have on their lives ahead. And so, that desire for sustainable products is really important. And brands who can innovate across these four pillars will future-proof themselves. Um, I put a slide in here really about the importance of data. I'm going to jump over it just so I've got time to get to the Q&A because I want to give people a chance to ask questions. But basically what we're talking about is the importance of data in forming decision making. Spot the trends early, spot the signals early, spot the new behaviors early, adapt and be agile, I think is the point of that slide. So if we go to the playbook for, I can't believe I'm talking about the second half of the decade now, the playbook for 2026 onwards, 6 practical steps for entering the next planning stage, multi-tiered pricing, so that meets different budgets in different family environments, digital innovation, how we bring together the screen and the physical, deepen licensing, connecting nostalgia, fandom, and kids' heroes into the products that they want to play with, building enduring products, creating appeal across multiple age segments, expanding internationally, so identifying underserved markets, new markets where there's possible growth, and adapting quarterly, moving away from annual decision cycles and using live data or regularly captured data to inform the decision-making process, to inform product development, marketing, distribution, commercial partnerships, all of the above. And the playbook prepares brands in an uncertain world, hopefully whilst identifying new routes to revenue. So I needed to allow 10 minutes for questions, so I thought I would bring it to an end there. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed that. As Anne said, the presentation will be available. My email is there. If you don't get to ask a question or you don't have time to ask one or you need to dive off, then please do feel free to contact me. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time and engagement today. All I can say is, as someone who's passionate about this industry, that I've been in kids all my working life. I think they're the most fascinating audience to understand, and I think we're all very privileged to work with them either from a research or product perspective. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Adam. That's great, great presentation. And now if anyone has questions, please use the Q&A icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit them. And we do have some questions in the queue. So Adam, phygital play seems to be evolving quickly. For companies that aren't very tech focused, where is the best place to start?
Okay. I think it's identifying partners. So I mean, if you really are just a product-based organization in the physical space, my sense would be that you would want to identify potential partners to work with who have digital expertise. After all, you're the experts in the physical, they're the experts in the digital. It feels like a natural synergy to combine the two and use those. I mean, certainly. I would also add in always build stuff to that satisfy play patterns that we know that work. So, if you ever watch kids, hide and seek is a play pattern that works, fishing is a play pattern that works, building train tracks or road layouts, they all work. And and you'll see kids if they just, watch them draw, watch them color, they're natural things that they'll do. So try and align with what their natural play patterns are rather than trying to get them to adapt to one of your play patterns. The other thing I'd say about this combination of physical and digital is don't put the digital in the way of the play. So a great story that I learned from years ago where, someone developed a ball that had a digital element to it, and it was all about encouraging the kid to throw higher, throw further, have more complete throws because it could sense it was being caught rather than dropped on the ground, things like that. So build the digital element that supports the play.
Thank you, Adam. We have another question. You mentioned that kidults now make up a sizable share of the toy market. What are the most effective ways for brands to tap into that audience without alienating kids?
Oh, well, I'm going to use a case study, which is that, you know, Lego, for me, has done it perfectly. It builds products. The brand starts with Duplo. It moves into the more classic and straightforward sets. Then it starts moving into the fandom with the collectibles, so the Harry Potters and things like that. And then it starts getting into the Lego Technic for the teens, then becomes more like Lego architecture, sort of buildings from around the world. And then we start to see the more complex sets that you don't ever want to break up, you want to put on a shelf. And I think so it's that evolution. It's build the product so the product grows as the person grows, so that the kid doesn't feel the product is, it's been stolen by adults. They feel it's something that as they get older or they can aspire to as they get older. And I think that's the most important thing. I don't think kids object to, seeing an elder brother playing with a toy or collecting a toy. I think it's the fact that it just needs to have that complexity built in so that the child feels like, okay, I finished that set. The next set's a bit tougher, but then I'm going to master that set and go up. So it has that same effect that video games do as you work your way through the levels.
Thank you, Adam. We have another question. How are parents' expectations around value and quality changing, and how should brands reflect that in their product strategy?
Oh, that's a great question, isn't it? I think we've got two factors. We've got the parent factor with, they want the best value for the money for their dollar that they're spending. The kids want a certain number of attributes within it. So there's the given, it's got to be fun, otherwise the kid's not going to come back to it, but it's got to have other elements as well. But I think it's got to have these other attributes that 30 years ago didn't exist. So sustainability. Kids want to know that it's good for the environment, it's not hurting animals or wildlife. And, they're thinking, of they've got their 40, 50, 60 years of life ahead of them. So I think those are all elements. It's not an easy one. It's one where a lot of people come to us and ask us, well, what's driving that purchase decision making? And I said, well, you've got the kid on one side who wants toys to be fun, stimulate their imagination, support their creativity, but also something I can play with someone else if my mate comes round, or perhaps something that's portable I can take to grandma's. And then on the side of the parent, it has to be in budget. It has to be, look as though it's not going to fall apart, or parents want to do that. And if you've ever seen kids in the toy store where they run down the aisle and grab a box and they shake it, turn it upside down and look at it, they're getting a sense of the noise that's in there as to whether it's there's a value to it as well. So sensory, even if they can't open the box, there's an element of that. So difficult question to answer genuinely. From a broad perspective, but I say, we have this parent factor, the child factor, and then obviously, I would say you need to, there's an element of need of getting in the marketing of communicating some of those key factors. Obviously, you can't, messaging can't be so comprehensive, it covers everything. But obviously, it's kind of combining those two audiences into one, which I know is tough. And it's a question we get asked a lot, but it usually relates at product or brand level rather than per se.
Great. Thanks, Adam. We have another question. I guess this is probably our last. You mentioned education will play a role in toys. Any thoughts on developmental elements, features parents are looking for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got STEM toys on, I'm not a fan of drawing axes with kids because I don't like to do that. But, at one extreme, you've got really clear STEM toys that parents can see, wow, they can see how their child is developing. At the other, you've got subtle developmental support. I would argue that, you know, a kid figuring out how to build blocks and make sure they don't fall over because the center of gravity is right. They're not going to understand center of gravity at the age they figure it out, but that is developmental too. So I think, it's where you want to be on the scale. Do you want to be the kind of the brand that, very much is aligned with STEM learning? or do you want to build in that there is developmental elements to the toy product that satisfy? And if we think of kid archetypes, you've got the nurturer, you've got the expression, the kid who wants to express themselves, you've got the discoverer, you've got the social, they want play to be cooperative and collaborative. So, and actually each of those elements has developmental, the nurturer understanding how to care. When we ask kids what they want to be, a lot of young kids want to move into what I call helper carer professions. So being a vet, being a nurse, those kind of professions, because that naturally aligns with that natural instinct to care. It's why young kids love pets. So I think that, the education element, if we were to talk to German parents don't want toys to be educational because that's for school, that's for learning. Entertainment should be entertaining. So it's balancing it out. It's balancing the developmental benefits that a child gets through play. And let's be truthful, anyone who's read any expert, academic about play says humans learn a lot by playing. Animals do too. Just look at, lion cubs, chewing mum's ear, playing with mum, playing with mum's tail. Play is builds into development. Toys facilitate that. And I think, that's why the industry is still, goes through rough times, but it's why the toys still are so important in kids' lives.
Thank you, Adam. That wraps up our time today. I want to thank Adam and the Insights family for this great presentation and sharing the information. And I'd like to thank you, our members, for joining us and ask you to please stand by to answer a short survey as we end today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us and have a great rest of the afternoon.